Okay, everybody, welcome to our panel. Welcome to Digital Hollywood. Has everybody been engaged and informed and entertained so far? Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. My name's David Bienenstock. I'm a journalist. I've been writing about cannabis for 15 years. I'm the host of a podcast called Great Moments in Weed History with Abdullah and Bean. And I do not know what it means to be a wizard of cannabis, but I am assured that I'm in the presence of 5 to 6 of them. And we're gonna meet everybody, and then I think we can, have a fun discussion. There's been a lot of policy today. There's been a lot of advocacy. There's been a lot of talk about the media. So I'm looking forward to a good, relaxed, interesting, engaging conversation, and let's just start with everyone introducing themselves.
How you doing? My name is Kasim Osgood. I'm a 12-year retired NFL veteran and heavy advocate of CBDs, THC, and the whole green space in general. I'm from a company. The NFL is a company that likes to keep things secret. They like to keep people not knowing what's really going on, and the same thing is happening with the government and our industry right here that we're speaking of today. And I'm hopefully trying to campaign an industry where we're increasing our knowledge, transparency, and scientific data to back up what we've been knowing for many years with one of our pioneers of the industry. He's known for quite some time is that information that the regular public does not have is something that they need to get. And I'm a huge advocate of sharing that knowledge, making sure that we have bullets in our gun to fire back when they call us outlaws.
Thank you. I'm Tim Blake. I'm the founder of the Emerald Cup. I started dealing when I was 14 in 1974. I've been in the industry ever since. I've watched every decade go by. You can just ask me what happened in the decade, and I can pretty much peel off what took place and how it went down. 15 years ago, I started the Emerald Cup. It's an outdoor organic cannabis competition. It was basically a celebration of the fall harvest. We just wanted to have the same rights that you go to county fairs and just celebrate. And the first year, nobody picked the first and third prizes up. People showed up in mass, and we really thought we were going to get busted. But we pulled it off. It expanded from there over the course of the years. It's now in Santa Rosa, Sonoma County Fairgrounds. It's got 30,000 people last year. We watched it go from flowers to finally bringing in concentrates to where we started talking about CBDs and cannabinoids, and now you've got tinctures, salves. There's so many contests going on, I barely can keep track of what's going on, So I've watched every aspect of the industry evolve with that, and now you're talking about cannabis, you talk about oil fields. You're not even talking about growing cannabis for cultivation anymore. It's really, most of it's going to go into extracts. That's where it's all happening, and it's manufacturing. So it's really been pulled away from the small farmers and the small manufacturers, becoming big business. And I said earlier, I went for Prop 64 because I really wanted to see access to medicine and people stop going to prison. I've had a lot of friends and myself go, and that's happened, but now we're looking at a whole different industry, and I'm very excited about that. It's an amazing opportunity and time for all of us. And so we've gone into vertical integration. We've got genetics. We saw several years ago that it was going to be terpene and profile strains that were going to be really predominantly needed. And so we formed a genetic company. We have distribution. We have a manufacturing plant. We have several permitted farms. And we have product companies, several product companies across the board, concentrates, oils, medicinals. And so we've spent a lot of time looking at that. And it's just you could spend all day talking about what's going on that I've seen in my lifetime. With the Canadians coming in, G7 selling all over the country and all over the world now, what's happening with us, with the Israelis, the Colombians, where it's all going. It's really exciting, but it's also, there's a lot of loss in there. I feel sorry for a lot of my friends and family that aren't going to be able to make it. People that were in that old industry were really outlaws that weren't good at social media, they weren't good at marketing, they were good at being underground outlaws and really having the guts to go do things. And so I'm glad to be part of both industries. I'm the old school and I'm the new school. And I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to see people like this coming into the industry and all the new energy and life coming in. It's just so exciting. And the medicinal aspects, I've survived several rounds of cancer. I don't have any functioning organs. I got molds from growing so much. I had aspergillus, black mold, candida at levels that would kill a person, scientifically tested. And so I've got no immune system. I really am only here by the grace of God and the fact that I don't do any oils, sugars. I have a gluten-free diet. I do everything perfect, and I still get sick all the time. But I'm very honored to continue on, and the Emerald Cup's now getting ready to go around the country and the world, and we'll bring the word of organic farming, sustainable living. We've upped the ante to regenerative farming now, because you've got to really regenerate the farms. We've destroyed all the topsoil across this country and this world, so that's the Emerald Cup. We just go around teaching people everything about the Emerald Cup's organic, and we're very proud of it, and we've been basing that for 15 years, and I'll never change. Thank you.
Quick show of hands. Who's been to the Emerald Cup? So for everybody else, it is a world-class event. It is a real opportunity to see where your cannabis comes from and your cannabis culture comes from up in the Emerald Triangle, which is Humboldt, Trinity, and Mendocino counties.
Hey guys, I'm Charlo Green. I'm a cannabis activist, entrepreneur, educator. I went viral a few years ago when I quit my job as a journalist to dedicate my energy toward activism and leading the charge to legalize weed in Alaska. After that, I created the Alaska Cannabis Club. I went on to produce and host the Weed Show, and I will be releasing my first book, Fuck It, A Guide to Letting Go and Living Free, on July 17th. It's available for pre-order now. I'm also going to be heading to trial in October, looking at 10 felonies and 4 misdemeanors for creating the Alaska Cannabis Club. So everything I'm doing up until that point is to draw attention toward the injustices that cannabis penalties proposed for people of color, especially even after legalization, which is something that's often overlooked.
Congratulations. Very hard to have a book.
It's really hard. It took much work. Yeah.
Hello, can you guys hear me? All right.
Bring up closer.
Closer? All right. Hi, I'm Jackie Sponseller. I'm an epileptic patient, cannabis activist, third generation grower. I'm also a dual citizen to Israel. I am a cannabis entrepreneur. I have 6 companies in 6 different countries, and I research alongside different labs and universities in Israel. I also have a charity called Weed the Homeless, where we give cannabis and food and toiletries to the homeless, and I'm very passionate about, saving the world one joint at a time, collectively. So, I love that. Nice to meet you.
Hey everyone, I'm Christopher Gavigan. So I started my career as an environmental health advocate and really toxic avenger, where I think is most interesting in the world of today around health and wellness is this idea that we live in a fairly toxic and a fairly questionable and highly caustic and toxic world. And how do we do and how do we navigate and how do we caretake our homes and our lives and our families? And a lot of people really lean on the science and they lean on the data and they lean on the innovation. But ultimately, it comes back to the brands, and because the regulatory realities we all know are riddled and loose. And so the brands need to be the source of trust. And it is my belief that the brand has to be the innovator, has to be the communicator, and has to be the partner and friend. Well, throughout the world of my backstory, I started a brand called The Honest Company, and The Honest Company was there to provide families and healthy product solutions across the gamut of 5 different categories, everything from diapers to personal care to cleaning. And I was fascinated by this world of, okay, you can tell people what not to put on their bodies and not put on their skin, but ultimately removing toxins and chemicals doesn't solve the problem. You need to be a solution provider, and you need to provide balance, you need to restore wellness, and you need to have ingredients and solutions that can bring back and restore health. And so my partner and I are starting a new brand called Hempia, which will be a new line of high quality unrefined hemp oils that you'll soon be able to access. And really, in a world where we're elevating the conversation, elevating the innovation, and really providing a durable brand in the consumer products goods space, where I don't feel that is available to consumers today.
Excellent. So as I said, I've been reporting on cannabis for 15 years, and to me what keeps it interesting is it's about so many things. It's about a plan, it's about criminal justice, it's about culture and society, and here we have an athlete, we have somebody who represents our growing culture, we have a journalist, we have a health advocate, and we have a branding person. And what we all share is obviously a passion for cannabis. So I think if everybody can maybe tell me what was the moment or the circumstances that made you want to become a public advocate for this plan. And I think the answers will all be unique, but hopefully have a commonality that brings us together.
For me personally, being a professional athlete, we weren't allowed to take these drugs. We were told to take. Prescriptions that we got were derived from the big pharma that was tied into the NFL network as a whole. For me, when I retired, I could say I probably have somewhere up to 800 to 1,000 concussions, and that's it's a heavy trauma and toll on the brain. A lot of times the doctors will diagnose you post-mortem, so there's no way to actually know if you have any type of damage in there. Sometimes the imaging doesn't come back positive, so they sort of use that as another tool to sort of avoid the issue. So when I retired, I tried to figure out a way to undo all the damage I did for 12 years, or actually for 22 years, because I've been playing football since I was 12 years old. And I found that with CBDs, there's a huge impact in the brain. The cannabinoids actually go into the brain and they help your, I believe it's, there's a chemical, I can't remember right now, I had it written down. So I have 10,000 notes in my head that are everywhere. Adenosine actually helps protect your brain. And my brain was not producing enough of it, and actually the endocannabinoid system was causing my brain to eliminate it faster out of my brain than normal, which would cause delays in speech, lethargicness. It would actually decrease my appetite. So, I mean, we all know everybody jokes about getting the munchies and things like that. Small things like wanting food or desiring food when your body needs it. My brain was not helping my body receive the nutrients I needed. So, in an effort to try to fix it, I went to the Brain Treatment Center, and they talked to me about the magnets they use to help polarize your brain waves and things like that. But the doctor told me, couple this procedure with cannabinoids, and you'll see a dramatic increase. And sure enough, after about 3 weeks of treatment with the cannabinoids and the magnet system, I was able to increase my brain function back up to 98%. And it was remarkable because there's been no literature about this. This is something that a doctor has been doing trial research on that I kind of bumped into at a store who remembered me from playing football and told me about it. And I was able to receive this beneficial help that I really desired for quality of living. And there's a lot of players in the NFL that do not have the same quality of living as I do because they're not informed. So one of my main goals for this crusade I have, partnering with a couple of my friends, Will and Ali from THC.com, we have a platform now where we can actually get this information out there because science and information is the key to success for our community. And a lot of times people still have the stigmas attached to the name THC. It's still attached to marijuana. It's still looked at negatively on the grand scheme of things. But when you have actual scientific data that can say for a person with epilepsy, there's actually a inhibitor that CBD takes over and regulates that cellular structure so that it allows the body to function at a normal pace because it mimics what your endocannabinoid system does as a normal function anyway. Then you could actually have scientific proof to tell people, oh, instead of just saying it helps with epilepsy, you actually break down from a scientific standpoint so that they can't refute you. Because knowledge is power, we all know that. So the more knowledge we have, the more ammo we have to fight off the people that continue to tell us we just want to get high. Because it's not about getting high. It's about curing cancer. It's about curing epilepsy, anxiety, depression, frustration, mood swings, irritability, dissociative identity disorder, schizophrenia. There's a countless list of things that are happening in our society that Big Pharma just wants to medicate and make money off of it because for them it's the institution. For us it's a way of life, and we've always said it's a way of life from day one, and they've looked at us as the outcasts or the people who want to go against the mainstream media. Well, in actuality, we're the people that are very informed, very enlightened. That's why they call it getting high, because we're a higher level of consciousness, and it's up to us to increase that information highway so that people can catch up to where we've been for days. So that's one of my main passions.
Thanks. And quick show of hands. How many people are aware that the federal government has a patent on a specific use of cannabinoids? And keep them up if you know what that use is. It's as a neuroprotectant. Exactly what you're talking about, and the government has known for a long time, and not only have they suppressed that information, but they want you to take their pharmaceutical drugs. How do you feel that that message is spreading through the athletic community? Do you think more people than a couple of years ago are aware of this?
Oh, definitely. I wrote a letter to Roger Goodell, who's the commissioner in the NFL, because I wanted him to speak on behalf of the players and retired players, to speak to the owners, because they have a lot of issues right now. They're dealing with the concussion settlement. They're dealing with a lot of malpractice, misuse of drug prescriptions. It's a big headache. It's a PR nightmare, and also it's a economic nightmare for them. So I said, in order for you guys to continue your way of life of playing football and making money from it, why don't you eliminate some of these headaches by looking at the facts that are right there in your face, and stop looking at it as a social stigma, and get the data behind your point of view, so that way you can go to the public and say, this is actually what it's doing. This is how it helps us. This is how it benefits us. The GABA protein in your body helps with calming your body down, relaxing you from anxiety, from depression, pain management. These are things that football players go through on a daily basis. So when you have cannabinoids introduced to that equation, they actually change the GABA receptors in your brain. This actually allows you to physically calm down. So rather than using Valium or all the other benzodiazepines, you can literally use CBDs to mimic the same effect. And after writing that letter to him, explaining all this in terms that he probably didn't understand, because I don't think he knows anything, but they actually did remove CBDs off the banned substance list for the NFL. So they're making strides towards it. They just need the information so that they can't go back and say you don't know what you're talking about.
That's wonderful. Tim, you come from a part of the world and from a community where cannabis has been a big way of life, but for a long time people were not coming forward about it. What inspired your decision to be a face for this plant and speak out publicly?
Well, it was a series of events. I grew up where you didn't keep anybody's numbers. You had 500 numbers in your head. You talked on payphones. You had PTSD. You were fearful every day of your life. And getting tired of that, as you go on, I had several brushes with the law, with the feds, went to jail a couple times, looked at a couple 15-year prison sentences. And I got really tired of that, and we finally did the Emerald Cup, because I was just looking there like, why can't we have a celebration of the fall harvest and just a friendly competition? And it's like, you know what, come and get me, but we're going to do it. And so that was, of course, we did it quietly, no posters and whatnot. We weren't too out front, but that was the beginning of that 15 years ago. But then I had a really serious health issue with some cancer that metastasized into my bone, ate about an inch into my bone, and I cured it with black sap, Native American, and I realized that there was a substance that they weren't allowing us to use that actually cured and killed cancer. But then I had a large hole in my leg, literally, and it wasn't healing up. I never went to a doctor. I'm a little crazy. And so I found out that the Simpson oil, I poured it in there and wrapped my leg up, and 4 days later there was a scab and it actually started to heal. And I'd heard the same thing about Simpson oil. This was way in the early days, but it's like, yeah, right, whatever. And so then I actually saw, and it was like, okay, I became an advocate medically because I watched that it saved my life. And so shortly thereafter, I had a couple issues with the cops, and I decided to try to get a dispensary. And well, before that, actually, what happened was somebody came to me, Pebbles Trippett, who's a famous activist. She got herself arrested for the right to transport cannabis and put herself in jail for a year. And she came to me and said, in Mendocino County, they can't get elected without our vote. So would you sponsor the sheriff's debates at your place, Area 101? And I thought, wow, that's wild. We're going to bring the cops up here and talk with them. Well, my brother-in-law is Captain in Watsonville PD. I got two uncles that are cops and lawyers and priests in my family. And so we did. And we had 400 people come up, and we had 4 sheriff candidates. And there was a runoff, and we had them come up, and we actually got Tom Almer elected, who's still the sheriff of Mendocino County. And then we had the DAs that liked it so much they came up. So in the course of a year, we had 4 gatherings at Area 101, my campground up there in Event Center, where everybody came together. It was the first time in the nation. And it just kind of rolled from there. Then we put together the 9.31 program, which you guys may not be aware of, but it was the first program in the country where you could grow cannabis outside legally with permits from the sheriff's department in the county. I was the number 2 guy on that. And then the feds came in and busted that program, and Tom Almond, the sheriff, went on camera and said, we were doing recon for a bunch of cartel grows, and you busted these legal guys. What's going on? And they said, license one more and we'll take you all out. And so everybody in Mendocino got to see what was really going on with the feds. And so that led to further getting into advocacy. And then at one point I said to Tom, can I open a dispensary, the sheriff? And he said, I got to go back and talk to the DEA and the feds in the camp. I said, I want to bring cannabis to throughout California, because at that time most of the cannabis was indoor, and they really wouldn't even talk about outdoor. They looked down on it because people had been growing in the shade for so long. People didn't realize that cannabis growing in the sun actually could be great flowers. That's how far back it was. People thought that if you grew cannabis in the sun, it was no good. And so he got permission to do that. He said, there's good news and there's bad news. And he said, the good news is they're going to let you have the dispensary. The bad news is you didn't tell me who you were. Your friends at the DEA have been hunting you for 25 years, and they're still going to get you. So at that point, I became a full advocate and kind of gave up that side of my life. And because of the health issues, I teach people how to survive. Because of the advocacy, I was part of CCPR, which was the basis for Prop 64. For 10 years, I spent my life down at the Board of Supervisors advocating for Mendocino County to evolve into these programs. And I've never stopped. The Emerald Cup's got bigger and bigger, and I've kind of been, pulled reluctantly into that, because anybody will tell you who's an old outlaw, it's not about being in the public, it's not about tooting your horn, it's not about big trucks, it's about really being quiet and humble and integrity-based. And so it's really been kind of a trial. You guys don't see me that much because I'm really pretty much a recluse. I do this reluctantly because I know it's definitely needed out there to have elders that really can show the way.
Thanks. Charlotte, I think you're unique. I may be proven wrong in that your moment when you decided to become a public advocate for cannabis was live on television.
No, it was actually a few months before that.
Yeah. Oh, tell me.
I was working as the crime and courts reporter, and cannabis was only considered a crime, so it fell into my lap. We had a vote coming up on recreational cannabis legalization up in Alaska. So I was flown to Colorado and Washington to research and share what our community could look like if we decided to step into legal landscape of Alaska. While I was out there, I met a lot of the customers that also happened to be patients that had driven for miles and hours all to gain access to a plant that they said was saving their lives. And this was the first time that I, a cannabis consumer, for years and years secretly, had actually seen people that were using it to save themselves for something more than what I thought was recreation for me. So I got back home to Alaska, put together the reports, and the last part of it was sharing the stories of the people being affected by the laws as they stood at the time, which were that medical marijuana had been legal since '98, but we didn't have any in Alaska. No problem. But we didn't have any medical marijuana dispensaries or any way for patients to gain access. So it was it was like a catch-22. And so talking with the patients that went through the process of finding a doctor and paying him hundreds of dollars to get their medical cards, only to be left searching back alleys for access to their medicine, it was heartbreaking, So I knew I was in a position where I could do something to help out. I had access to the lawmakers themselves, the people enforcing the laws, and so I created a network, a community of people that knew what this plant was and knew how to connect with other people in this group of medical marijuana card holders, and that was the Alaska Cannabis Club. As we got closer to the vote to legalize, there was the club and I was the weed lady publicly, and no one knew there was any sort of connection between me as the public weed reporter and the person behind the Alaska Cannabis Club. But I saw the support for the vote was slipping, and something was going to have to happen to change the conversation that was taking place surrounding cannabis. People only understood it as a drug for the most part, and we have this huge thing with alcohol in Alaska. So when the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol kept on saying that same statement again and again, it was falling on deaf ears. It was it was being received as this is another thing that we need to fear as a community, and they just weren't connecting. So I knew it was going to take someone local that understood my hometown, someone that cared, and someone with access and an opportunity to change things. So I decided that I would shift gears from trying to make a difference in journalism to really making a difference for the people that really needed access to cannabis. And that's why I decided to say fuck it on live TV.
There you go. Thank you. And Jackie, perhaps you can take us from when you discovered that cannabis is an effective medicine for you to that moment to decide to speak out about it.
I mean, it was actually quite a long time before I found out that it's medicine for me. I was in my first raid for cannabis at 6 months old. My father went to prison for it, and I was adopted because of my father went to prison. So I actually was, raised completely different, and I was raised to believe that cannabis was the devil. It was everything against society and law, came from a very Republican upbringing. And my father, my biological father, was always considered to be a criminal. And when they finally came open to me that I was even adopted at 12, this was branded in my head that marijuana was horrible, and this is why you never knew your father. I have epilepsy because since I was 10 years old due to meningitis. I was put on a bunch of pharmaceuticals from the age of 10, an average of 16 different pills, different pharmaceutical prescriptions, like 60 pills a day that I was taking from basically the age of 10. So throughout those years, high school and stuff, I'm Californian, I smoked weed. It was nothing. I grew weed in sophomore year of high school. It was just what we do. It was kind of a SoCal culture thing. But it was always something my mom wanted to throw me into rehab for. It was horrible. I was supposed to go to law school. I actually got into Berkeley Law, deferred my acceptance because of my epilepsy was very bad at the time. This is a recommendation of my dean and my family. And that's when I got into the cannabis industry. It was actually another 4 years of me being in the cannabis industry out of college that I was still very quiet about it. I had 3 different dispensaries. I was kind of built an underground reputation because I had 2 art galleries that were art galleries, but in the back of there were dispensaries. There's speakeasy dispensaries. And I did my activism like this. It wasn't activism. I knew that cannabis helped me. I knew that where I was helping, our family's dispensary had 10,000 patients in San Diego Organic Collective. I knew that it was helpful, but I still knew as my upbringing that it was bad, it was criminal, and I should be a lawyer. So what's wrong with you? And it wasn't until I was 2 months before my 25th birthday that I was diagnosed with stage 1 HCC liver cancer. And this was due from me taking pharmaceuticals my entire life. I went through 3 stages of chemo. After my third chemo session, I went home and I tried to kill myself by taking all the pills I had. And that was my death. I went my whole life taking pills, and then, now that's killing me. I was not even 25 years old, and I was over it, And ironically, even being in the business and doing all these things, actually making and giving fecal full extraction cannabis oil to my patients that had cancer, ironically some of them epilepsy. I never fully practiced what I preached. I was still taking my pills, and I would smoke, and it was helping my side effects. But to be honest with you, I don't think I truly believed that cannabis was really gonna save my epilepsy, because I still had the stigma from my family behind my upbringing. It was bad. And I was still, maybe I just wanted to get high. It was after my suicide attempt, and I actually had literally no medication because I took them all, and I was hospitalized afterwards and went home. And I actually called a patient that I had given cannabis oil to 3 weeks before and asked them if they still had a syringe, because my body was so withdrawing so bad, and I was in pain, and I also from the chemo, all of it. And I started taking oil because I knew it would be strong enough. I just want edibles and oils because I knew it would be strong enough to help me. Because that's what helped my body pains after seizures, edibles. right? And I started taking it, and I would take it every day because I was so sick during that time. It was about 3 weeks after just taking these oils that I woke up one morning, and I remember I was making coffee, and I had my headphones on. I was going to go for a walk, and then it dawned on me that was the first time in over a year that I had enough energy to want to go for a walk. The first time I woke up in the morning, I was making coffee. It was something I knew in that moment that there was something different. And, you know, after that, I just tried to kill myself. I was, all right, what do you have to lose? I'm going to publicly talk about this. This is helping me, you know. 6 months later, my cirrhosis part of my liver that had turned into cancers, it was completely gone. It was I have scar tissue there, but it's not considered cirrhosis, the lobe. I'm able to control my seizures with the oils. I've getting on a good regimen, diet, exercise, and cannabis oils has greatly changed my life. And from there, I've been able to. I haven't been able to shut up about it. I've been traveling the world and just like, you know, doing stuff with Dr. Meshulam in Israel, just everybody, Dodi, the Technion, every place. Like, this is what I come from a family of doctors. Give me science, give me research. I could go to them and tell them to shut up. You know, like, give me this, you know. And then, to be honest with you, despite being a third generation grower, I have not had my family support until the last year or two, where they're like, okay, we believe you, you know. So no, it took me a while. I was actually a hypocrite. I was somebody selling weed and getting high and didn't really believe in it until my life literally was saved on it.
Wow. And maybe just a show of hands, because I think we're all in this situation to very varying degrees. Who's felt stigmatized in their life because of cannabis? Okay, and you know, we have to recognize that persists even after the laws change, even after our health changes, even after society changes. We're still dealing with that, and thanks for being a part of speaking out. Christopher, how did you make that journey to become somebody who wanted to speak out for this plant and start a business around it?
You know, there wasn't a watershed moment for me as much as there was, much like you, which is an incredibly powerful story. But I'm attracted to the idea that there is a better way to talk about it. And there's a better way to teach and popularize and to make it accessible to people. Because that's what I feel. The data is being unlocked and being discovered right now. Over 85 clinical studies being just done on the cannabinoids and terpenes alone. So the world of hemp, yes, the world of cannabis, but the world of hemp is plant medicine. There are therapeutic, highly body beneficial qualities about it, and people need to know. And that is our job. Our job is to discover and teach, but also to talk about it. What's the tone? What's the personality? What's the brand essence? How do you feel? What's the logic behind it? Who's the science? That essence of credibility and that essence of brand beauty needs to be beautifully told, and quite candidly, the industry hasn't done a good job at it. And now is the time, because there's stigmas being dissolved. It's becoming more and more accepted, but still there's not one place to turn to. Where's the education? Where's the one truth source? And that's what I think is the greatest challenge as a father, as a citizen who believes that wellness and health is a choice, and that you can find and seek better choices, and as a business person that believes that it's our duty to make this stuff accessible, not only with content and with communication, but with price. And right now I'm seeing that a lot of people are priced out of the market, and I think that's unacceptable as well. So how do you build a great, stable trust brand? Because that's really what you're selling. You're selling trust and credibility. How do you do that with a level of discernment and great association, and how do you do it with the highest quality product? Because I've also seen, coming from the world of the world of chemicals and toxicants and incidentals, that a lot of the product in the marketplace is, number one, not meeting label claim, number two, loaded with pesticides, mold, bacteria, you name the constituent. And so we need to be testing, we need to be accountable and transparent and fully validate it. If you're proud of it, show it. Put it on your website. Be clear with it. And I think that is our job, is crack open. And crack open with story, crack open with emotion, crack open with great data. And do a better job at it. And that's what I think is such a challenge and such an opportunity. Like I microdose my 22-month-old every night, and like I've seen massive transformation and change with hemp oil. And I am a full believer that is our job to do a better job at telling the story.
Thank you. Let me just, we have not that much time left. Are there people with questions? Because we can take a couple questions. Yes?
Hi, I'm Eva Pichette, and I'm a nurse, and I'm a two-time breast cancer survivor. I fell into the world of cannabis with my second battle. But the part as a nurse and as a patient that I wish we could speak more to is the negative side effects of cannabis, so that way we can address it and use it more safely.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm very sensitive to THC, and I also have a mental health history. So with high levels of THC in my system, I become very paranoid. So it's very important that we teach patients that it is medicine, and just like opiates and other medications, that there are side effects, but that you don't have to be afraid of those side effects. You just have to understand how to use the medicine appropriately and microdose appropriately. And I think that's something else that as a community that we need to help to educate about as well as that's very important.
Thank you. Is there anybody who's maybe, did you want to comment on that, Jack?
Sorry, let you finish the.
Why don't you go?
Sorry, I agree, and that's something I try to also bring awareness with my activism, and it's also not just with the negative side effects of cannabis, but also what poor growing, not flushing the cannabis properly. PGR, people don't realize what that's actually is cancer causing. It's pro-growth hormone that a lot of growers use to give really good structure and nose, as we say, to the bud. And if we don't properly flush it out, it can actually cause cancer. And these are and then a lot of people are getting where it's I can never pronounce the name in English right, but it's severe nausea and a lot of this is actually from people from, again, unflushed marijuana or pesticides that are left on the buds. And these are things that we're researching in Israel to see, because they want to see, they're scientists. They're not trying to prove something, they're just collecting data, most of the people. They're just saying this is right, this is wrong, this is what happens. And this is something that we're discovering. And I want to preach this to people, because if we don't take proper, as growers and companies, if they don't take proper precautions in making sure they're providing true medicine, organic medicine that's clean, it can actually be counter-effective and actually cause cancer. And that's against what we're doing as a movement completely. And again, it causes very bad side effects. And we can't be so biased, We have to actually bring the true awareness of everything to the planet. I agree completely with her.
Yeah, but we're talking about mental health, and we have such a fragile society, mentally and emotionally right now. You can look at the combination of the foods, the water, the pesticides, chemtrails, whatever you want to call it, the stress. And there's quite a large contingent that really doesn't do well with THC. You look at Weed for Warriors, you look at the vets, you look at PTSD, and THC is really harmful to them. And it's something that we want to address, we have addressed at the Cup, and having that in my family, bipolar, not myself, but bipolar and other issues and stuff, is something that really needs to be brought out, because we make it look like it's such a wonderful thing, but yet there's a large segment that really should just continue to stay with CBD. And on the other side, you look at the CBD with the vets, and we're finding out that they're doing like 30 to 40 times what they thought the amounts of CBD. So people that do have those conditions should be doing massive amounts, not CBDs, but cannabinoids, different variations, but they should be doing massive amounts because they really then see that they get real help. And so many, many aspects of the healing, we need so much of that medicine, and it's got to be whole plant medicine like you're talking about down there, because when you grow it in biodynamic soil, and you do it with love, and you do it in that way, then that medicine is truly activated, you know, and it's brought so much more relief. So there's a whole way of how to grow it, how to nurture it, and how to deliver it to people in the right way, and it comes down to that story you're talking about, and how to really bring that story. So people like what you're saying is really a critical, important part of that aspect.
Thank you so much. We'll go one more question, sure.
How is mainstream media, I know I've seen sometimes Vice Special, have people in mainstream media now, as you get closer, I guess, in a couple of months toward the actual trial, have they taken a different stance to like the cause or a plight, or they still don't know enough about what's going on with your situation to actually get behind you? I mean, we just got Meek Mills out, so
right.
Everybody stopped the world to get Meek Mills out. Do you think you need a bigger platform to let people know, like a Netflix show, something, to make people stop and get you out of that situation?
I don't exactly know the answer to that question. I know that generally speaking, when mainstream media picked up my story about the 54 years that I was facing for legal weed, the general response was outrage. But as we all know, the news cycle is cyclical and the news just rolls on. So my trial isn't for another 5 months. Leading up to that, you'll be hearing a lot more about it. I'll be doing my part. My team will be doing our part to plead my case in the court of public opinion leading up to my trial in Alaska. But I don't think the mainstream media has changed their stance. If anything, I think they're more accepting of cannabis. It's been 4 years since Fuck It. And people have only gained more knowledge and access and understanding to the plant. So I'm hoping that will be reflected in the jury and their decision.
Now, that's one of the ways that they wear you down. They take you into court, they drag you out for years. You know, first time you're there, you got 100 people there supporting you. And after the 5th time, there's just the hardcores, the activists that are there, because they just wear people down. By the time you get there 3 or 4 years later, you're out of the news cycle, you're worn out, people are worn out, and you really almost get left behind. It's amazing to watch people face serious criminal charges and the way they go about very effectively wearing out the criminal aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of my campaign for my freedom is the book that tells the story. I know I didn't get into a lot of it up here out of respect for my co-panelists and their time, but it goes over everything. What it feels like facing a potential lifetime in prison for sacrificing myself for what I thought was the greater good. And you said there were 100 people the first time. There was one person, like outside of my family, that was there for the first trial, or first court date. So I don't know. It's a shitty situation.
I think that gets to our strength as a community. And, you know, I think Tim hit on an important point. As we've suffered from the stigma we talked about before, we've also suffered from outrage fatigue. There's been so much abuse of our rights in so many ways by so many entities, whether it's the NFL denying you the access to the medicine that you want and need because they're in bed with pharmaceutical companies and alcohol is a big sponsor, or everything that, you know, the growers of the Emerald Triangle suffered under Prohibition and now trying to come out and survive legalization, and your own family. You know, we've got to stick together, I guess is my point. I I know this is the last panel of the day. We're out of time for the panel. I think if anybody wants to come up and speak with the panelists, but please, let's give them a big round of applause, and thanks for attending the event, and don't stop caring a lot about cannabis when you walk out of the room. Thank you, everybody, for coming today.